In 1933, a bankrupt nation with 6 million unemployed workers began the largest military buildup in human history. Within 6 years, Germany transformed from an economic basket case into the most powerful war machine Europe had ever seen. The question that haunts us is not how Hitler rose to power, but who paid for it. This is the story of the financial architecture that built the Third Reich. It is not a tale of conspiracy, but of documented transactions, signed contracts, and quarterly earnings reports. The money that armed the Wehrmacht came from the most respectable addresses in New York, from boardrooms overlooking Wall Street, from institutions that still exist today. There exists a pattern in financial history that repeats with disturbing regularity. Capital flows not toward virtue, but toward opportunity. When a nation needs rebuilding, when a regime requires resources, when a government promises stability and return on investment, Wall Street arrives with open checkbooks. The mechanism is always the same. First, loans to stabilize the currency, then investment in infrastructure and industry, finally, partnerships with corporations that need labor, resources, and markets. The financiers tell themselves they are promoting economic development, fostering trade, preventing chaos. They never ask what their capital will ultimately build. After World War I ended in 1918, Germany lay in ruins. The Treaty of Versailles stripped away 13% of German territory, a quarter of its coal mines, and 3/4 of its iron production. The Allied powers demanded reparations totaling 132 billion gold marks, a sum so staggering that quarterly payments alone seemed impossible. By 1923, Germany spiraled into hyperinflation so severe that $1 equaled 4.2 trillion German marks. The savings of the middle class evaporated overnight. Political violence erupted in the streets as communists and fascists battled for control of a dying republic. Washington watched these developments with growing alarm. If Germany collapsed completely, France would intervene militarily, potentially triggering another European war. More importantly, American banks had loaned billions to Britain and France during the war, and those Allied powers depended on German reparations to repay their American creditors. In 1924, the United States government assembled an international committee led by Chicago banker Charles Dawes. The resulting Dawes Plan revolutionized the German economy through a massive injection of American capital. Wall Street banks provided 800 million gold marks immediately, with half that amount coming directly from American financiers. This was just the beginning. Between 1924 and 1930, American banks poured an estimated $2.5 billion into Germany through the Dawes Plan and its successor, the Young Plan. J.P. Morgan and Company coordinated much of this lending, establishing Germany as one of the largest recipients of American foreign investment in the world. The money worked exactly as intended. German factories roared back to life. New infrastructure projects employed millions. By 1929, German exports exceeded their 1913 levels by 34%. Germany became entirely dependent on American capital for its economic survival. When Adolf Hitler became chancellor in January 1933, American corporations already dominated key sectors of the German economy. These were not distant investments in government bonds, but direct ownership stakes in German industrial giants. General Motors had acquired Atom Opel AG in 1929, making it the largest automobile manufacturer in Germany. When the Nazi government began rearming in 1935, Opel opened a massive new truck plant in Brandenburg specifically to supply the Wehrmacht. By 1937, 17% of Opel's Blitz trucks went directly to the German military. By 1938, that figure reached 29%. By 1944, more than 130,000 of these medium-weight trucks had rolled off Opel's assembly lines, becoming the backbone of German military logistics. Ford Motor Company operated similarly. Ford's Cologne plant produced trucks and vehicles for the Wehrmacht throughout the 1930s. In July 1938, Henry Ford himself received the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, the highest medal Nazi Germany could bestow on a foreigner. The award honored Ford's contributions to German industry and his widely published anti-Semitic writings. But the deepest American involvement came through chemical giant IG Farben, the conglomerate that produced everything from synthetic rubber to Zyklon B gas. Standard Oil of New Jersey held crucial patent agreements with IG Farben for synthetic fuel production. These agreements, maintained through the 1930s, gave Nazi Germany the technical knowledge to produce gasoline from coal, a capability essential for a nation preparing for war without access to oil fields. When Congress investigated these arrangements in 1942, Senator Harry Truman stated bluntly that Standard Oil had conspired with IG Farben to restrict synthetic rubber development in America, while sharing the technology with Nazi Germany. American investment in the German economy, by the time of Pearl Harbor, totaled $475 million, an enormous sum for that era. The financial architecture supporting Nazi Germany extended far beyond industrial investments. Wall Street banks provided the plumbing through which Nazi Germany accessed international capital markets. Chase National Bank, the predecessor to today's J.P. Morgan Chase, earned millions of dollars between 1936 and 1941 through the Rook-Wanderer Mark scheme. This program allowed German Americans to purchase German marks at discounted rates, funneling hard currency into Nazi coffers. Chase acted as the primary broker, taking a percentage on every dollar sent to Germany. The total amount raised through this single program exceeded $20 million. Even more troubling was the Bank for International Settlements, created in Basel, Switzerland, in 1930 to handle German reparation payments. After the Nazis came to power, the BIS became a crucial financial intermediary for the Reich. Hjalmar Schacht, Hitler's economics minister and Reichsbank president, sat on the BIS board of directors alongside American banker Thomas McKittrick. Between 1939 and 1945, the BIS handled transactions involving gold looted from occupied nations. In March 1939, after Germany seized Czechoslovakia, the BIS facilitated the transfer of Czech gold reserves to Nazi Germany, despite knowing the gold belonged to the Czech National Bank. Throughout the war, the BIS accepted gold that had been stolen from central banks across Europe, then remelted to conceal its origin. The genius of Nazi rearmament financing was its opacity. Hjalmar Schacht invented a shadow money system called Mefo bills, essentially IOUs issued by a dummy corporation called Metallurgische Forschungsgesellschaft. Between 1934 and 1938, the Nazi government issued 12 billion Reichsmarks worth of Mefo bills to finance military spending, without officially adding to the national debt. These bills could be redeemed at the Reichsbank, meaning they functioned as currency while remaining hidden from government expenditure statements. This clever accounting allowed Germany to rearm in secret, violating the Versailles Treaty without immediately alerting foreign observers. The system only worked because Germany could access international credit markets through its American banking relationships. American financial institutions understood exactly what they were financing. Internal documents from Sullivan and Cromwell, one of Wall Street's most prestigious law firms, show that the firm's senior partners, including future Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, actively facilitated American investment in Nazi Germany throughout the 1930s. Nearly 70% of American capital flowing into Germany passed through Sullivan and Cromwell's offices. Union Banking Corporation, a New York investment bank managed by Prescott Bush, handled assets for German industrialist Fritz Thyssen, one of Hitler's earliest and most generous financial backers. In October 1942, the U.S. government seized Union Banking Corporation under the Trading with the Enemy Act. Documents showed the bank had operated as a front for Thyssen's financial empire until well after the war began. The mechanisms that financed Nazi Germany in the 1930s did not disappear after 1945. They simply found new applications, new markets, new regimes requiring capital and offering returns. Today, Western financial institutions hold trillions of dollars in exposure to authoritarian regimes worldwide. The pattern remains identical: loans to stabilize currencies, investments in infrastructure, corporate partnerships that transfer technology and manufacturing capacity. The stated goal remains the same: promoting economic development, fostering trade, preventing instability. Consider the financial relationship between Western capital and China over the past 3 decades. American corporations moved manufacturing operations to China beginning in the 1990s, creating the industrial base that now produces much of the world's electronics, consumer goods, and increasingly military hardware. American technology companies transferred intellectual property, trained Chinese engineers, and built factories that generated enormous profits for shareholders. Wall Street banks facilitated China's integration into global capital markets, underwriting bond offerings for state-owned enterprises, managing initial public offerings for Chinese corporations, providing the financial infrastructure for China's economic transformation. The aggregate value of Western investment in China's economy now exceeds anything seen in 1930s Germany by orders of magnitude. The Belt and Road Initiative, China's infrastructure program spanning 149 countries, has drawn over $1.175 trillion in Chinese investment since 2013. While Western banks have not directly financed the BRI, they have provided capital to many of the same recipient nations through loans, bonds, and development projects. The effect is the same: building infrastructure and creating dependencies. The critical question is not whether history repeats, but whether we recognize the pattern before it completes its cycle. In the 1930s, American financiers convinced themselves they were preventing economic collapse in Germany, maintaining stability in Europe, protecting their legitimate business interests. Every quarterly report showed profits. Every board meeting discussed returns on investment. The concentration camps came later. The financial relationship between American capital and Nazi Germany ended only when the Wehrmacht invaded Poland, and even then, some corporate relationships continued through neutral intermediaries until America entered the war. The system did not collapse because bankers developed moral clarity. It collapsed because military conflict made the arrangements untenable. Today's global financial system is vastly more complex, interconnected, and resistant to disruption than anything that existed in the 1930s. Supply chains span multiple continents. Corporate ownership structures hide behind layers of subsidiaries and shell companies. Capital flows across borders at the speed of light through electronic transfers that leave no paper trail. This complexity serves a purpose. It allows institutions to claim plausible deniability when their investments fund surveillance systems, supply military logistics, or support regimes engaged in systematic human rights abuses. The argument remains consistent across generations. We are simply doing business, following market signals, fulfilling our fiduciary duty to shareholders. But the historical record is clear. Capital does not care about ideology. It flows toward opportunity regardless of consequence. The institutions that financed Nazi rearmament did not do so because they supported fascism. They did so because Germany offered returns on investment that Depression-era America could not match. The conventional narrative teaches us that World War II resulted from the failure of democratic nations to confront fascism early enough. We learn about appeasement, about Neville Chamberlain waving paper at the Munich conference, about diplomatic miscalculations and military unpreparedness. This narrative is incomplete. The Nazi war machine was not built by diplomatic failures or political miscalculation. It was built by American capital, channeled through American banks, invested in American-owned subsidiaries, generating profits for American shareholders. The quarterly reports were real. The board meetings happened. The money was transferred. The uncomfortable truth is that many of the most respected institutions in American finance played essential roles in creating the very enemy that American soldiers later died fighting. After the war, there were no consequences. No bankers stood trial at Nuremberg. No corporations faced dissolution. The profits were kept. The relationships continued. The warning this history offers is not about any specific nation or ideology threatening us today. The warning is about the pattern itself, about the unwillingness of financial institutions to look beyond quarterly earnings statements, about the persistent belief that economic engagement automatically produces peaceful outcomes. In 1924, American bankers genuinely believed they were preventing another European war by stabilizing Germany's economy. In 1933, American corporations genuinely believed their German subsidiaries were simply participating in infrastructure development. In 1938, American executives genuinely believed business relationships could exist separately from political systems. They were wrong about all of it. The money they invested, the factories they built, the patents they shared, the financial instruments they created, all of it went toward building the most destructive military force in history. The camps, the invasions, the genocide, none of it could have happened without the economic foundation that American capital provided. This is the pattern that repeats. This is the warning that echoes across generations. This is the lesson we refuse to learn. Capital flows toward opportunity. Institutions prioritize returns over consequences. And when the bills finally come due, when the true cost of those investments becomes clear, the bankers and executives who built the system are long gone, their profits safely distributed to shareholders. The question is not whether it can happen again. The question is whether it is happening now in plain sight, documented in quarterly reports and board meetings, while we convince ourselves that this time is different. History suggests otherwise.